Kate Morgan wiped the sweat from her forehead as she worked on the quantum drive in the engine room of the UES Discovery. The massive machine hummed with power, its blue glow filling the cramped space with an otherworldly light. She had been working on the drive for 3 hours straight, making sure every connection was perfect and every system ran smoothly. The Discovery was deep in space near the Kepler 442 system, conducting what everyone thought was a routine survey mission. The ship felt safe and secure as it moved through the darkness between stars. Captain Hayes had assured the crew they were well within human territory, far from any known alien threats. The 43 people aboard the Discovery went about their daily tasks with the confidence that comes from being in friendly space. Kate loved her job as the ship's chief engineer, and she took pride in keeping the experimental quantum drive running at peak efficiency. The other crew members often joked that Kate talked to the machines like they were alive. She would pat the quantum core and whisper encouragement when it ran hot, or gently adjust controls while explaining what she was doing. The truth was that Kate understood machines better than most people understood other people. She could feel when something was wrong just by listening to the subtle changes in the engine's rhythm. That morning, Kate had noticed a small vibration in the quantum core that shouldn't have been there. It was barely noticeable, just a tiny tremor that occurred every few minutes. Most engineers would have ignored it, but Kate knew that small problems became big problems if left alone. She had spent the last few hours tracking down the source of the vibration, adjusting connections and recalibrating systems until everything ran perfectly smooth. The Discovery was humanity's newest research vessel, equipped with technology that pushed the boundaries of what humans thought possible. The quantum drive could move the ship faster than light by folding space around it, making journeys that once took years possible in just days. Kate was one of only 12 people in the entire human fleet qualified to work on such advanced technology. As she made final adjustments to the quantum matrix, Kate felt proud of her work. The drive was running better than it had in months, and she knew it would carry them safely through whatever missions lay ahead. She was about to close the access panel when the ship's emergency alarm began to wail. The sound echoed through the engine room with a piercing intensity that made Kate's heart skip a beat. Red lights flashed throughout the engine room as Kate rushed to the nearest communication panel. She pressed the button and spoke into the microphone with urgency in her voice. "Engine room to bridge, what's our status?" The response came back filled with static and panic. "We're under attack. Unknown vessels dropping out of hyperspace. All hands to battle stations." Kate's blood ran cold as she heard the fear in the communications officer's voice. She had never been in a real battle before, and the Discovery was a research ship with minimal weapons. The ship shuddered violently as something struck the hull, throwing Kate against the bulkhead. Emergency lighting kicked in as the main power fluctuated, casting eerie shadows throughout the engine room. Through the ship's internal sensors, Kate could see what was happening outside. 5 massive alien vessels had appeared from nowhere, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that glowed with menacing energy. The ships were unlike anything in human databases, with angular designs that seemed to cut through space itself. They moved with a predatory grace that spoke of advanced technology and hostile intent. The alien vessels opened fire without warning or communication. Bright beams of energy lanced through space, striking the Discovery's shields with tremendous force. The research ship's defensive systems, designed more for asteroid impacts than military combat, began to fail almost immediately. Kate watched in horror as the shield generators overloaded one by one, leaving the Discovery defenseless. Against the alien assault, Captain Hayes tried to send a surrender signal, but the aliens ignored all attempts at communication. They seemed determined to destroy the human ship completely, giving no quarter and showing no mercy. Their weapons were designed specifically to tear through human defenses, as if they had studied human technology and knew exactly how to defeat it. The Discovery's hull began to buckle under the relentless attack. Sections of the ship vented atmosphere into space as the alien weapons punched through the armor plating like it was paper. Kate could hear the groaning and shrieking of metal, as the ship's structure was torn apart around her. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut throughout the vessel, sealing off damaged sections and trapping crew members in their duty stations. Kate tried to maintain power to the engines, hoping the Discovery could escape, but the quantum drive was taking damage from the constant impacts. Warning lights flashed across her control panels as system after system went offline. She rerouted power from non-essential systems and tried to keep the drive stable, but she knew it was a losing battle. The aliens seemed to know exactly where to hit the human ship for maximum damage. They targeted the weapon systems first, then the communications array, and finally the engines. It was a methodical destruction that spoke of careful planning and detailed knowledge of human ship design. Kate realized with growing horror that this was not a random encounter, but a carefully planned ambush. As the Discovery broke apart around her, Kate managed to send out a distress signal using the ship's emergency transmitter. The message was short and desperate, containing their position and a plea for help from any human vessels in the area. She knew the chances of rescue were slim, but she had to try. The signal transmitted for only a few seconds before the communications array was destroyed by alien fire. The engine room shuddered as another massive explosion rocked the ship. Kate was thrown to the floor as the lights went out completely. In the darkness, she could hear the sounds of her ship dying around her. Metal groaned and twisted, atmosphere hissed out through cracks in the hull, and somewhere in the distance, she could hear the screams of her fellow crew members. Emergency power flickered on, casting dim red light throughout the engine room. Kate pulled herself to her feet and looked around at the devastation. The quantum drive was still running, somehow undamaged despite the chaos around it. She realized that the emergency bulkheads had sealed her section of the ship, cutting her off from the rest of the Discovery, but also protecting her from the worst of the damage through the ship's failing sensors. Kate watched as the alien vessels methodically destroyed every escape pod that launched from the Discovery. The aliens were not interested in prisoners or survivors. They wanted every human aboard the ship to die, and they were succeeding. Kate felt a cold rage building in her chest as she watched her friends and colleagues murdered by an enemy that gave them no chance to fight back or surrender. The Discovery's main reactor finally failed, and the ship went completely dark except for the glow of the quantum drive. Kate was alone in the engine room, trapped in a section of a dying ship, surrounded by aliens who thought all humans were dead. But Kate Morgan was still alive, and she was already beginning to plan her survival. Kate woke up in complete darkness with her head pounding and blood trickling down her face. The silence was absolute and terrifying, broken only by the faint hum of the quantum drive that somehow still functioned in the wreckage around her. She tried to move and immediately regretted it as pain shot through her left arm. Something was definitely broken, but she was alive when she should have been dead. The emergency bulkheads had held when the Discovery broke apart, sealing her section of the engine room into what had become both her prison and her salvation. Kate slowly pulled herself upright and tried to assess her situation. The temperature was already dropping rapidly toward the deadly cold of space, and she could see her breath forming small clouds in the dim emergency lighting. Her training as an engineer kicked in automatically as she began to catalog what resources she had available. The quantum drive was still generating power, though at much lower levels than normal. The emergency life support system was functioning, but would only last a few hours at most. She had a toolkit, some spare parts, and whatever materials she could salvage from the damaged engine room. Kate knew that no human had ever survived in space without a proper life support system for more than a few minutes. The alien attackers had studied human biology and knew exactly how fragile humans were supposed to be. They had scanned the wreckage, detected no life signs, and moved on, confident that every human aboard the Discovery was dead. But Kate had always been stubborn, and dying because aliens thought she should die struck her as completely unacceptable. She began working with the desperate efficiency of someone who knew that every minute counted. Her first priority was heat, because the cold of space would kill her long before she ran out of air. She disconnected power cables from non-essential systems and rerouted them to create heating elements around her small workspace. The quantum drive's energy output was irregular and dangerous, but Kate managed to create a feedback loop that generated enough heat to keep her alive. She wrapped herself in insulation torn from the walls and created a small warm zone in the center of the engine room. Next, she tackled the problem of oxygen. The emergency life support was designed to keep one person alive for 6 hours in a sealed compartment. Kate knew she needed to extend that time dramatically if she was going to survive long enough for rescue. She opened up the air recycling system and began modifying it. With spare parts from other systems, using components from the quantum drive's cooling system, Kate built an improved carbon dioxide scrubber that was 3 times more efficient than the original. She found oxygen canisters from emergency suits and rigged them to feed into her improvised life support network. Every modification was dangerous and violated multiple safety protocols, but staying alive was more important than following regulations. The work was exhausting and complicated by her injuries. Her broken arm made fine manipulation difficult, and she had to stop frequently to rest and warm her hands. But Kate had always been good at solving impossible problems, and this was just another engineering challenge that needed a creative solution. As she worked, Kate began to think about the aliens who had attacked them. Their weapons and tactics showed detailed knowledge of human technology and weaknesses. They had known exactly where to hit the Discovery to cause maximum damage with minimum effort. This suggested they had been planning to attack human ships for a long time. The realization made Kate angry, and anger gave her the energy to keep working when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. The aliens thought they were so superior. With their advanced technology and overwhelming firepower, they thought humans were weak and easily defeated. Kate was going to prove them wrong. Even if it killed her. She spent hours modifying and improving her makeshift life support system. The quantum drive provided power, but it was unstable and required constant adjustment to prevent dangerous overloads. Kate created a manual control system that allowed her to regulate the power flow by hand, giving her the ability to channel energy where it was needed most. 12 hours after the attack, Kate had created a survival system that should have been impossible. She had heat, oxygen, and enough power to keep both systems running for days instead of hours. But she wasn't content with just surviving. She was an engineer on a warship, even if it was just a research vessel, and she began thinking about how to turn her prison into a weapon. The quantum drive was designed to fold space for faster-than-light travel, but the same technology could be used to create devastating weapons. Kate had studied theoretical applications of quantum manipulation in her advanced engineering courses, though no one had ever tried to build such weapons because they were considered too dangerous and unpredictable. But dangerous and unpredictable were exactly what Kate needed right now. She began sketching out modifications to the quantum drive that would turn it into something the aliens had never seen before. The power requirements were enormous, and the risk of catastrophic failure was almost certain. But Kate was beyond caring about safe engineering practices. She worked through the night, using salvaged components to build targeting systems and power regulators for her improvised weapon. The quantum drive could generate massive amounts of energy in short bursts, enough to punch through almost any known shielding system. The trick was controlling that energy and directing it where she wanted it to go. Kate created a crude but effective targeting system, using the ship's remaining sensors and her own engineering knowledge. She couldn't see much from her sealed compartment, but she could detect the energy signatures of nearby spacecraft. If the aliens came back to investigate the wreckage, she would be ready for them. The work was incredibly difficult with her injured arm and limited resources, but Kate refused to give up. She had survived the initial attack through luck and quick thinking. She had created a life support system that defied every known limitation of human technology. Now she was building a weapon that could threaten ships vastly more advanced than anything humanity had ever constructed. As she made the final connections to her improvised quantum weapon, Kate allowed herself a small smile. The aliens thought she was dead, but they were about to learn that humans were far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. She had been working for over 30 hours straight, running on determination and stubborn refusal to accept defeat. Kate tested her systems one final time and settled in to wait. She had food and water for several days, her life support was stable, and her weapon was ready. All she needed now was for the aliens to come back and investigate the wreckage they had left behind. She didn't have to wait long. Her improvised sensors detected the distinctive energy signatures of alien ships approaching the debris field. Kate's heart began to race as she realized her chance for revenge was finally at hand. The aliens were about to discover that killing humans was much harder than they thought. She powered up her quantum weapon and prepared to show the galaxy what happened when you underestimated human ingenuity and determination. The aliens thought she was dead, but they were about to learn that reports of her death had been greatly exaggerated. Commander Zethkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the tactical display with growing curiosity. His science officer, Nithra, had detected unusual energy readings from the wreckage of the human ship they had destroyed 36 hours earlier. The readings made no sense according to everything the Vorlik Empire knew about human technology. The Vorlik had been studying humans for months before launching their first attacks on human shipping. They had captured several human vessels and learned exactly how fragile the pale creatures were. Humans died quickly in vacuum, froze to death in minutes without heating, and suffocated rapidly without their primitive life support systems. They were a weak species that relied entirely on their technology to survive in space. Zethkar had ordered the attack on the Discovery because humans were expanding into territory the Vorlik Empire claimed as their own. The research vessel had been alone and undefended, making it a perfect target to send a message to the rest of humanity. The attack had gone exactly as planned, with the human ship destroyed completely and all life aboard extinguished within minutes, but now his sensors were detecting active power generation from the wreckage, along with energy signatures that didn't match any known human technology. Nithra insisted the readings were accurate, though she couldn't explain what was causing them. The quantum signatures were unlike anything in the Vorlik database, and they were growing stronger instead of fading away. Zethkar decided to investigate personally. The energy readings might indicate that the human ship's computer systems were still active, possibly containing valuable intelligence about human military capabilities and expansion plans. At worst, it would be a minor detour to examine some interesting wreckage. At best, it might provide information that would help the Vorlik Empire plan future attacks on human targets. The Vorlik battle group approached the debris field cautiously, though Zethkar wasn't really concerned about danger. The humans were all dead, their ship was broken into a dozen pieces, and whatever was generating the energy readings was probably just some automated system, running through its final shutdown procedures. He had seen similar phenomena before with other alien species. As they drew closer, the energy readings became even more puzzling. Nithra reported that the quantum fluctuations were actually increasing in both intensity and complexity, as if someone was actively modifying the human ship's power systems. But that was impossible, because all life aboard the vessel had been confirmed dead hours ago. Zethkar ordered a full sensor sweep of the wreckage, searching for any signs of life or active systems. The scans confirmed what he already knew. There were no life signs anywhere in the debris field. The atmospheric readings showed hard vacuum throughout the wreckage, with temperatures well below what any known species could survive. Whatever was causing the energy readings, it wasn't a living creature. The flagship moved closer to the largest piece of wreckage, which had once been the human ship's engine section. The quantum readings were strongest there, emanating from what appeared to be the remains of the vessel's power plant. Zethkar was impressed, despite himself, at the ingenuity of human engineering. Even in death, their machines continued to function with remarkable persistence. Suddenly, the wreckage blazed with brilliant light as multiple energy beams lanced out from the debris. The nearest Vorlik cruiser shuddered under the impact of weapons that shouldn't have existed. The beams cut through the cruiser's shields like they were made of paper, striking the hull with devastating force. Alarms wailed throughout the Vorlik fleet as the impossible became reality. Zethkar stared at his tactical display in shock as the dead human ship continued its attack. The quantum beams were unlike any weapon he had ever encountered, seeming to ignore conventional defenses and strike directly at the target's hull. The cruiser's armor, designed to withstand the most powerful Vorlich weapons, began to buckle and tear under the sustained assault. Then came the transmission that made Zethkar's blood run cold. A human voice, clear and strong, broadcast across all communication frequencies with deadly calm. "This is Lieutenant Commander Kate Morgan of the United Earthship Discovery. You destroyed my ship, you killed my crew. Big mistake." The voice belonged to someone who should have been dead for over a day. According to every piece of scientific data the Vorlich possessed about human biology, no member of that species could survive for even an hour in the conditions present aboard the wrecked ship. Yet here was a human, not only alive but actively fighting back with weapons that defied all known principles of physics. Nithra frantically ran additional sensor sweeps, trying to understand what she was seeing. The readings still showed no life signs from the wreckage, no atmosphere, and temperatures that would kill any known species within minutes. But the energy signatures were definitely being controlled by an intelligent being, someone who understood both human and Vorlich technology well enough to create hybrid weapons. The attack continued with devastating precision. Kate Morgan, somehow alive in the vacuum of space, was using the wreckage of her own ship as ammunition. Pieces of debris accelerated to incredible speeds by the modified quantum drive struck Vorlich vessels like guided missiles. Each impact was perfectly timed and aimed, showing tactical awareness that impressed even Zethkar. The second Vorlich cruiser tried to maneuver away from the debris field, but Kate had anticipated this. Her quantum beams reached out across space to strike the retreating vessel, causing its shields to collapse and its hull to rupture. The cruiser began venting atmosphere and spinning out of control as its crew struggled to contain the damage. Zethkar realized he was facing something completely outside his understanding of warfare. A single human, armed with nothing but wreckage and determination, was defeating multiple Vorlich warships with weapons that shouldn't have been possible to build. Everything the Vorlich Empire thought they knew about humanity was proving to be dangerously wrong. Kate's voice came across the communication channels again, and this time there was a note of grim satisfaction in her tone. "You thought humans were weak. You thought we would just lie down and die when you attacked us. Let me show you how wrong you are." The quantum weapon fired again, this time targeting Zethkar's flagship directly. The beam struck their forward shields with tremendous force, causing power fluctuations throughout the ship. Damage reports flooded in from multiple sections as the Vorlich crew struggled to understand how their most advanced defenses had been so easily penetrated. Zethkar ordered his fleet to spread out and surround the wreckage, hoping to overwhelm the lone human defender with superior numbers. But Kate had studied Vorlich tactics from the battle recordings of their previous attacks. She knew exactly how they would respond, and she was ready for them. False sensor readings began appearing on Vorlich instruments, showing multiple human ships approaching from different directions. Kate had somehow gained access to their sensor networks and was feeding them false information. The deception was sophisticated enough that even Zethkar began to doubt whether they were facing a single defender or a larger human force. The Vorlich fleet found itself fighting shadows and phantoms while the very real threat of Kate's improvised weapons continued to tear through their ranks. Ships scattered to counterattacks that didn't exist, leaving individual vessels vulnerable to her precisely aimed quantum beams. It was a tactical masterpiece executed by someone who should have been dead. As his third cruiser began to lose structural integrity under Kate's relentless assault, Zethkar finally understood what he was facing. This wasn't just a human who had survived impossible conditions. This was a warrior who had turned her own death into a weapon. Someone who represented everything dangerous and unpredictable about the human species. The battle was turning into a disaster for the Vorlich Empire, and Zethkar knew he had to make a decision quickly. He could continue the fight and risk losing his entire fleet to a single human armed with scrap metal, Or he could retreat and try to understand what had gone so terribly wrong. Either choice would damage his reputation and the Empire's confidence in their superiority over humanity. Kate felt the quantum drive shuddering under the strain of sustained combat as she fired another beam at the retreating Vorlich cruiser. Her improvised weapon was performing beyond her wildest expectations, but she knew it couldn't last much longer. The power couplings were overheating. Her makeshift targeting system was becoming increasingly unreliable, and her life support was finally starting to fail after 37 hours of constant operation. But Kate Morgan had never been the type to give up when things got difficult. She rerouted power from her heating system to give the quantum weapon one more massive discharge, accepting that the cold would probably kill her in exchange for taking down another alien ship. The beam lanced out across space with brilliant intensity, striking the Vorlich cruiser's engine section and causing a cascading explosion that tore the vessel apart. 3 Vorlich ships destroyed, and she was just getting started. Kate allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction as she watched the alien fleet scramble to respond to her attacks. They had come here expecting to find a debris field and some useful intelligence. Instead, they were getting a lesson in why underestimating humans was a fatal mistake. The Vorlich commander was trying to coordinate his remaining ships, but Kate had spent hours studying their tactical communications during the original attack on the Discovery. She understood their command structure and battle protocols well enough to exploit their weaknesses. Using her jury-rigged transmitter, she began broadcasting false orders on Vorlich military frequencies. The alien ships received what appeared to be legitimate commands from their flagship, ordering them to specific positions that would make them easier targets for Kate's weapons. The deception worked perfectly because the Vorlich had never encountered an enemy who could mimic their own communications with such precision. Several ships moved exactly where Kate wanted them, walking straight into her carefully planned trap. She fired her quantum weapon at the reposition vessels, scoring direct hits on 2 more cruisers before they realized they had been deceived. The Vorlich fleet was in chaos now, with ships scattered across the debris field and their command structure compromised by an enemy they couldn't see or understand. Kate had turned the aliens' own superior technology against them, but her improvised systems were reaching their absolute limits. The quantum drive was becoming dangerously unstable, threatening to explode and take half the debris field with it. Kate's life support had completely failed, and she was now surviving on the last few minutes of air in her makeshift pressure suit. She was dying, but she was determined to take as many aliens with her as possible. That was when her long-range sensors detected something that made her heart leap with hope. A human ship was approaching the edge of the system, moving fast and broadcasting the identification codes of the UES horizon. Captain Ryan Blake and his crew had received her distress signal and come to investigate. Help was finally on the way, but Kate wasn't sure she could survive long enough to be rescued. Captain Blake stood on the bridge of the horizon, staring at his tactical display in amazement. His sensors showed an active battle in progress around. The wreckage of a human ship, with someone broadcasting from the debris field using Lieutenant Commander Kate Morgan's voice patterns and identification codes. It should have been impossible, but the evidence was right there on his screens. Dr. Lisa Park confirmed that the voice patterns matched Kate's service records with 97% accuracy. The woman who should have been dead for over a day was somehow alive and fighting off an entire alien battle group, using nothing but wreckage and determination. It was the most incredible thing Blake had ever seen in 20 years of military service. Commander Jake Sullivan prepared the Horizon's weapon systems, but Blake held him back. They needed to understand the tactical situation before they joined the fight. The alien fleet was clearly in disarray, with several ships already destroyed or damaged by weapons that shouldn't have existed. A single human survivor was somehow winning a battle against impossible odds. Kate detected the Horizon's approach and felt a mixture of relief and desperation. She opened a communication channel to the rescue ship, knowing this might be her last chance to speak to another human being. "Horizon, this is Kate Morgan. I'm aboard the Discovery's engine section, but my life support is gone and my weapon is about to overload. I've got maybe 5 minutes before this whole place goes critical." Blake responded immediately, his voice filled with professional calm despite the incredible situation. "Kate, this is Captain Blake. We're preparing an emergency beam out, but we need you to stabilize your position first. Can you shut down your weapon systems?" Kate looked at her control panel and laughed, though there was no humor in the sound. "Negative, Captain. The quantum drive is locked in feedback mode, and I can't shut it down without losing power completely. But I can do something better. I can turn this whole debris field into the biggest mine in galactic history." She began overloading the quantum drive deliberately, but instead of letting it explode randomly, she was channeling the energy into a controlled detonation that would destroy everything within a 10-kilometer radius. It was a desperate gambit, but it would eliminate the remaining Vorlek ships and send a message to their empire that humans were not easy prey. Blake understood what Kate was planning, and he also understood that she was running out of time. The horizon moved closer to the debris field, but they were still too far away for a safe transport. Kate would have to hold her position for at least another 2 minutes while they closed the distance. "Kate, you need to hang on just a little longer," Blake said over the communication channel. "We're almost in range for emergency transport." Kate's voice came back weak but determined. "I'll do my best, Captain, but this quantum drive has other ideas. The feedback loop is accelerating and I'm losing control of the reaction. You might want to consider backing off to a safe distance." Instead of retreating, Blake ordered the horizon to increase speed toward the debris field. He wasn't going to abandon a human survivor, especially one who had single-handedly held off an alien fleet for over an hour. Kate Morgan had become a legend in the making, and Blake was going to make sure she lived to tell her story. The Vorlek commander finally realized what was happening and ordered his remaining ships to retreat immediately. The energy readings from the human wreckage were spiking toward catastrophic levels, threatening to destroy everything in the area. The lone human defender was willing to die to take them with her, and Zethkar had no intention of giving her. At satisfaction. Kate watched the alien ships pulling back and felt a moment of disappointment. She had hoped to destroy the entire Vorlek fleet, but at least she had proven that humans could fight back effectively against superior technology. The aliens would think twice before attacking human ships in the future, knowing that even a single survivor could cause tremendous damage. The quantum drive reached critical overload just as the horizon achieved transport range. Kate felt the familiar tingle of the molecular transporter beam just as her improvised weapon system finally gave up and began its final catastrophic failure. The last thing she saw before losing consciousness was the brilliant flash of the quantum explosion that consumed the Discovery's wreckage and sent the surviving Vorlek ships fleeing in terror. Captain Blake caught Kate as she materialized on the horizon's transporter pad. Her body unconscious and barely alive after 37 hours of impossible survival, Dr. Park immediately began emergency medical treatment, marveling at the extent of Kate's injuries and the fact that she had survived at all. According to every medical text, Kate should have died hours ago from exposure, dehydration, and oxygen deprivation, but Kate Morgan was not just any human. She was an engineer who had refused to accept that her situation was hopeless, a warrior who had turned certain death into victory, and now she was something more. She had become proof that humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology or their numbers, but their absolute refusal to give up when everything seemed lost. Dr. Lisa Park worked frantically in the Horizon's medical bay, trying to stabilize Kate's vital signs while Captain Blake watched from the doorway. The medical scanners showed damage that should have been fatal multiple times over: severe dehydration, hypothermia, radiation poisoning from the unstable quantum drive, and injuries from the original attack that would have killed most people. Yet somehow Kate's heart kept beating with the stubborn determination that had kept her alive for 37 impossible hours. The story of Kate's survival spread through the human fleet faster than light communication could carry it. A single engineer had held off an entire alien battle group using nothing but wreckage and determination. proving that human ingenuity was more dangerous than any weapon. Every ship in the human fleet received detailed reports of the battle, and Kate's tactical innovations were immediately classified and sent to military research divisions. Word reached Earth within days, where the story captured the imagination of the entire human population. Kate Morgan became a household name overnight, representing everything that made humanity special in a galaxy full of hostile aliens. Children played games where they pretended to be Kate, fighting off alien invaders with improvised weapons. Adults spoke her name with pride and respect, knowing that she had proven humans could triumph over impossible odds. But the story didn't stop with humanity. The Vorlok Empire survivors returned to their homeworlds with tales of a dead human who had destroyed 3 warships and forced an entire fleet to retreat. Commander Zethkar faced a board of inquiry that struggled to believe his report. How could a single human, armed only with debris, defeat trained Vorlok warriors using their most advanced technology? Science Officer Nithra became obsessed with understanding what had happened during the battle. She reviewed every sensor reading and communication transcript, trying to comprehend how Kate had achieved the impossible. Her research led to a classified report that fundamentally changed how the Vorlok Empire viewed humanity. Humans were not the weak, easily conquered species they had appeared to be. They were something far more dangerous. Other alien civilizations heard the story through diplomatic channels and trade networks. The tale of Kate Morgan spread from species to species, growing with each telling but never losing its essential truth. A human had survived conditions that would kill anyone else, and turned defeat into victory through pure determination and creativity. Suddenly, every alien government had to reconsider their assumptions about human capabilities. Kate herself spent weeks recovering from her ordeal, but her body healed faster than anyone expected. Dr. Park attributed her rapid recovery to the same stubborn will that had kept her alive in the wreckage. Kate refused to accept that she was injured, so her body seemed to comply by healing itself with remarkable speed. Within a month, she was back on active duty with a promotion and a new assignment. The human military wanted to understand exactly how Kate had created her improvised weapons, and she spent months working with research teams to recreate her modifications to the quantum drive. The resulting technology became the foundation for a new generation of human warships, equipped with quantum debris weapons that could penetrate any known shielding system. Kate was assigned to design defensive systems for human colonies on the frontier, where alien attacks were most likely. Her experience surviving impossible conditions made her uniquely qualified to create backup systems and emergency protocols that could keep humans alive when everything else failed. She approached each project with the same stubborn refusal to accept defeat that had saved her life. The Vorlok Empire tried one more attack on human shipping 6 months later, hoping that Kate's survival had been a fluke. They targeted a convoy of merchant vessels, expecting an easy victory against lightly armed civilian ships. Instead, they encountered cargo vessels equipped with Kate's quantum debris weapons and defensive systems designed by someone who understood exactly how aliens thought. The second battle was even more one-sided than the first. Human merchant captains, inspired by Kate's example, fought with a ferocity that shocked their attackers. They used Kate's tactics, turning their own cargo into weapons and refusing to surrender even when heavily outnumbered. The Vorlok lost 5 ships before retreating, and their government decided that attacking humans was more trouble than it was worth. Trade. Negotiations between humanity and other species began to change in subtle but important ways. Alien diplomats, who had once dismissed humans as a minor power, started offering more favorable terms and showing greater respect. The story of Kate Morgan had changed the galaxy's perception of humanity from weak newcomers to dangerous survivors who could not be underestimated. Kate was invited to give lectures at military academies throughout human space, where future officers learned about tactical innovation and survival psychology. She always began her talks the same way, with a simple statement that became famous throughout the galaxy: "The aliens thought they understood us. They thought they knew our limitations. They were wrong." Her lectures focused on the lessons rather than the heroics, teaching young officers that humans succeeded not because they were stronger or more advanced than their enemies, but because they refused to accept defeat even when victory seemed impossible. Kate emphasized that every human had the potential to achieve the extraordinary when, pushed to their limits, the quantum debris tactical system became standard equipment on all human warships. But Kate's greatest contribution was not technological. She had proven that human determination was a force that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. Other species began studying human psychology and culture, trying to understand what made them so resilient. Kate returned to field duty. As the captain of her own ship, the UES Defiance, which was equipped with the most advanced quantum weapons humanity had ever built. Her crew was made up of volunteers who had specifically requested to serve under the woman who had become the most famous human in the galaxy. They knew they were serving with a living legend, someone who embodied everything that made humanity special. The Vorlik Empire eventually sought a peace treaty with humanity, partly because they realized that humans were far more dangerous than they had initially believed. Kate attended the signing ceremony as part of the human delegation, facing Commander Zethkar across a negotiating table instead of a battlefield. The alien commander looked at her with a mixture of respect and caution, clearly remembering their previous encounter during the negotiations. Zethkar asked Kate how she had survived conditions that should have been instantly fatal to any human. Kate smiled and gave him the same answer she gave to everyone who asked that question. You thought you knew what humans were capable of. That was your first mistake. The peace treaty included provisions for cultural exchange and technological cooperation, but both sides understood that the real foundation of the agreement was mutual respect. The Vorlak had learned that humanity was not a species to be underestimated, and humans had learned that they could stand up to any challenge the galaxy threw at them. Years later, Kate's story was taught in schools throughout human space as an example of human achievement and determination. Children learned about the engineer who had turned certain death into victory, proving that humans could overcome any obstacle through creativity and refusal to give up. The phrase, "Remember Kate Morgan," became a rallying cry for humans facing difficult situations, but Kate herself remained modest about her achievement, always insisting that any human could have done what she did given the same circumstances. She believed that her survival was not the result of special abilities, but of the fundamental human refusal to accept defeat when fighting for something important. That attitude, she argued, was what made humanity special in a galaxy full of species that were content to accept their limitations. The story of Lieutenant Commander Kate Morgan became one of the defining moments in human expansion into the galaxy. It proved that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their numbers, but their absolute determination to survive and thrive no matter what obstacles they faced. Kate had shown the galaxy that counting humans out was always a mistake, because humans simply refused to stay down when knocked down.